The elevator doors slid open with a soft, metallic chime, revealing a single figure. His name was John Adams, an ordinary man in his late 30s, dressed in a gray suit that blended seamlessly with the sterile environment of the office building. It was the last known image of him. The camera, however, caught something more disturbing: the unsettling stillness of the elevator as it traveled to the 15th floor. No one was inside, yet the security footage had captured it, moving as though it had a passenger. The building was deserted, save for a few workers finishing late shifts. No one heard a thing. The night was eerily quiet as Sarah Turner sat at her desk, finishing up paperwork. Her office, on the 16th floor, had only a handful of people left working late. Suddenly, her attention shifted as the elevator door pinged open, but there was no one inside. It was an odd occurrence, even for late-night shifts, but Sarah didn't think much of it. That was, until the elevator started its journey back down without anyone entering. Sarah's curiosity got the better of her and she decided to investigate. Sarah stepped into the elevator and pressed the ground floor button. The air inside felt stale. As the doors closed, she heard a faint sound, like something brushing against the wall. Her pulse quickened. She didn't remember hearing anything when the elevator came up, but the sound, the unsettling noise. She glanced at the security camera in the corner, but it showed nothing unusual, just her reflection in the mirrored panel. The elevator began its descent, but it seemed slower than usual. The elevator came to a sudden halt. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. The doors remained closed, and for a split second, everything felt wrong. She pressed the emergency button, but the familiar sound of the elevator's mechanisms failed to respond. Panic started to rise in her chest as she tried to push every button, but nothing worked. It was as if the elevator itself was holding its breath waiting for something. A low buzzing noise filled the space, and Sarah's gaze shifted upward, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, the elevator began its descent again. But this time it felt different, much faster than before. Sarah's stomach lurched as the ground floor approached, but just as quickly, the elevator slammed to a stop once more. The door opened, but no one was there. Outside, the hallway was empty, silent, and lifeless. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she looked around. What was happening? Why was she alone? Sarah took a cautious step out of the elevator. The air felt thick with tension as she glanced down both ends of the hallway. Nothing. She checked her phone. No messages, no calls, just the empty void of her screen. As she turned back to the elevator, she could see the reflection of someone standing behind her in the mirrored doors. But when she whipped around, the hall was still empty. The feeling of being watched crawled under her skin. There was something here, something she couldn't quite explain. Sarah rushed to the security room, her pulse still racing. She needed answers. The footage, she thought, would provide some clarity. She entered the dark room, and the security guard Tim looked up from his desk. "Something wrong?" he asked, noticing the urgency in her tone. Sarah nodded, her voice barely above a whisper, as she explained what happened with the elevator. Tim, who had worked here for years, seemed oddly unperturbed. "Strange things happen in this building," he muttered as he began scanning through the footage. Tim paused the footage on a frame of the elevator traveling upwards, empty as usual. Sarah leaned in, her eyes scanning for any abnormalities, but there was nothing. That was until Tim hit play again, and the screen flickered. The image shifted briefly. For just a second, a shadow appeared in the corner of the elevator, standing perfectly still. But when the screen resumed, it was gone, as if it had never been there. Tim's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what he had just witnessed. Sarah could feel the weight of something heavy pressing down on her chest. "What was that?" she whispered. Tim's face paled as he replayed the scene. "I don't know, but this isn't the first time." Sarah turned to face him, her eyes wide in disbelief. "What do you mean?" Tim hesitated before answering. "There've been other disappearances. They all happened around the same elevator, at different times." His voice trailed off. "We thought they were just accidents, but maybe there's something more to it." "Name down." Sarah felt a chill creep up her spine. The more time spoke, the more questions she had, but no answers. She needed to know the truth. "Can you show me the other footage?" she asked. Tim didn't respond immediately, but after a tense pause, he began pulling up older videos from months ago. Each video was eerily similar. The elevator would arrive empty, but seconds later the doors would close, and the car would begin its ascent or descent with no one inside. The last clip caught Sarah's attention. The timestamp read several weeks ago. In this one, a woman stepped into the elevator. She smiled at the camera and pressed the button for the 10th floor. A few moments later, the elevator began its descent. But the woman was nowhere to be seen. The only sign of her presence was the light of her phone lying on the floor, still glowing faintly. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Where did she go?" Sarah murmured. Tim looked uneasy. "We've never figured it out." He sounded almost resigned. Sarah's mind raced. The shadows, the phone, the eerie quiet of it all. There had to be a pattern, a connection, and she was determined to find it. But as she left the security room, she couldn't shake the feeling that the building itself was hiding more than it seemed. Something was watching. The next day, Sarah returned to the building, unable to shake the strange feeling that clung to her. She had no answers, just more questions. The elevator, which had been her focal point the night before, seemed to haunt her thoughts. It wasn't just the footage, there was something more. The more she walked through the halls, the more she felt a presence watching her. Was it the building? Or something else? Sarah's instincts screamed at her to investigate further, but she didn't know where to start. She decided to return to the elevator and stand there, hoping to experience something firsthand. As Sarah waited by the elevator, the hum of the building's lights above her seemed unnervingly loud. The quiet was oppressive. Her fingers gripped the handle of her purse tightly, her knuckles white. She glanced at her watch. She had been standing there for 10 minutes. Her patience was running thin when suddenly, the elevator doors opened without warning. There was no one inside, just the faint scent of something old, something stale. Sarah hesitated before stepping inside, her mind racing. Why was it always empty? Why did the doors open like that? The moment Sarah stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind her. The elevator jerked upward with alarming speed, and Sarah's stomach dropped. She pressed the emergency button, but the lights flickered in response, adding to her growing unease. As the elevator ascended, her eyes scanned the reflective walls, her own face staring back at her. She was alone. Or was she? Her heart raced as she caught a fleeting glimpse of movement in the corner of the elevator. Something, a figure, appeared for just a second, but when she looked again, nothing was there. The elevator came to a sudden halt once more. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This time, it felt different, more deliberate. She pressed every button frantically, but nothing happened. The emergency phone was dead. She was trapped in the same suffocating space she had feared. The walls felt closer now, as though the building itself was tightening its grip around her. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm herself. When she opened them again, a flickering image in the corner of the mirrored wall made her freeze. It was a figure, standing right behind her, only visible in the reflection. Sarah's heart pounded as she slowly turned around, but once again, there was nothing behind her. No figure, no presence, just an empty elevator. The silence was maddening. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the button to open the doors, but the elevator remained still. The building felt oppressive, its very walls closing in on her. She had to escape. She didn't care about the answers anymore, she just needed to get out. The moment the doors opened, she stepped out into the unfamiliar floor, unsure of where she was, but desperate to get away from the elevator. Sarah stumbled down the hallway, her legs weak with fear. The building was too quiet, too dark, and everything felt wrong. She had lost all sense of time, unsure of whether she was even on the same floor as before. Each turn she took seemed to lead her deeper into the unknown parts of the building. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was following her, even though every hallway she passed remained empty. As she turned another corner, she spotted a door slightly ajar, and without thinking, she pushed it open. Inside, the air was heavy, and the temperature had dropped. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, cramped room filled with outdated machinery and stacks of forgotten documents. The air was stale, and the silence hung like a thick blanket over everything. Sarah stepped cautiously inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The faint hum of old computers seemed to vibrate in the air. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she noticed something strange, an old map pinned to the wall, with red circles marking several locations throughout the building, including the elevator. It looked like someone had been tracking something, or someone. She approached the map, her fingers brushing against the paper, and the chill running down her spine grew colder. Sarah's hand trembled as she traced the red marks on the map. Her mind raced. Why was this here? Who had been tracking these locations? Her eyes scanned the room, landing on an old filing cabinet in the corner. As she walked over, her foot kicked something small and metallic. Looking down, she saw an old keychain, rusty and worn, with the initials J.A. etched into it. She picked it up, her mind reeling. It was the same initials as the man who had disappeared. Could this be a clue left behind by him? Or was it something else entirely? Her instincts told her this was no coincidence. As Sarah turned the keychain over in her hand, a sudden sound broke the silence. Footsteps. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. Slowly, she looked around the room, trying to pinpoint the source. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She had to get out of there. She darted to the door, but just as she reached for the handle, the door slammed shut. A voice echoed from the other side, cold and familiar. "You shouldn't have come here, Sarah." It was Tim's voice. Sarah backed away from the door, her breath quickening. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Tim knew something. He had been involved in all of this. "What do you want from me, Tim?" she called out, her voice shaky but defiant. "Why are you doing this?" There was a long pause, then a faint chuckle from behind the door. "It's not what you think," Tim replied, his voice low. "You've seen too much. Now, you're part of it." Sarah's pulse raced. She had stumbled upon something far darker than she could have imagined. Suddenly, the door opened with a creak, and Sarah stumbled backward. Tim stood in the doorway, his face pale, eyes cold. He stepped inside, blocking her only way out. "You shouldn't have come looking for answers, Sarah," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You've disturbed something you don't understand." Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. Tim wasn't the man she thought he was. There was something else, something lurking beneath the surface. "What are you involved in, Tim?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, his expression hardening. Tim took a slow step forward, and Sarah instinctively took a step back. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. "I can't let you leave," Tim said, his voice suddenly sharp. "You're too close to the truth. And now, you'll be part of it." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She was trapped. The walls seemed to close in on her as Tim's figure loomed larger. She had to escape, had to find a way out. But the keychain in her hand reminded her of something. It was a symbol, a piece of the puzzle. She couldn't give up now. Sarah's breath came in sharp gasps as she looked around the dimly lit room. Tim moved closer, his cold gaze never leaving her. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest. There was nowhere to run, no one to call for help. "You've been hiding something all along," Sarah said, her voice trembling but fierce. "I'm not afraid of you, Tim. I need to know the truth." Tim's lips curled into a slight smirk, as if her words amused him. He took another step forward, his shadow engulfing her. "The truth?" he echoed, his voice low and taunting. "You're already too far gone, Sarah. You won't leave here alive." With every step Tim took toward her, Sarah felt the walls closing in. But there was a spark inside her now, a fire that refused to be snuffed out. The keychain, still gripped tightly in her hand, felt like the only connection to the mystery she had uncovered. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't let Tim or whatever he was involved in drag her down. "This building, it's more than just a place," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with determination. "There's something else going on here, and I'm going to find out what it is." Tim's smirk faded slightly, but he didn't stop. The ground beneath Sarah's feet felt unstable, as if the very building was shifting with her every word. Tim stopped in front of her, eyes narrowing. "You really think you can stop this?" he asked, his voice now tinged with anger. "You don't understand what you're up against, Sarah. You think this is just about the elevator, but it's about much more than that." Sarah's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle finally starting to click. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Tim's lips parted in a slow, deliberate smile. "You've stumbled into something far darker than you could have ever imagined." Sarah's pulse quickened as Tim's words hung in the air. He wasn't just some security guard, he was involved in something much bigger. "What's in the building? What have you been hiding?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking but strong. Tim's eyes flickered with something dark, something she couldn't quite place. "It's not just this building, it's everything around it," he said cryptically. "This isn't just an elevator, it's a doorway, a way to bring things from beyond." Sarah felt her stomach lurch as she tried to process his words. "What are you talking about?" she gasped. Tim took a deep breath, his expression hardening as he continued. "We've been conducting experiments here, Sarah. Testing the boundaries between worlds. And now, because of you, everything is about to collapse." The words hit Sarah like a freight train. This was bigger than a simple disappearance. It was something supernatural. Something beyond her comprehension. You've been opening doors to another world," she whispered, the realization dawning. Tim nodded slowly. "The elevator was just the beginning. Now we can bring anything through. And it's all because of you." With the truth crashing down around her, Sarah felt the full weight of the situation. Tim had been using the elevator to open a portal to bring something, or someone, into this world. But she wasn't about to let him succeed. With a burst of adrenaline, she threw the keychain at Tim, aiming for his face. He stumbled back, momentarily distracted. In that instant, Sarah sprinted toward the exit, her heart racing. The door slammed open, revealing the eerie darkness outside. The sounds of something, or someone, following her echoed in the silence. She had to escape. Sarah ran through the dark corridors, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could hear footsteps echoing behind her, too close, too deliberate. She didn't look back. The building seemed to stretch endlessly, every hallway looking the same, every door leading to the unknown. Panic clawed at her chest, but she pushed it down. She couldn't afford to panic now. The elevator. The portal. She needed to destroy it, to stop whatever Tim had started. She had no idea how she was going to do it, but she couldn't let him finish whatever twisted plan he had. Suddenly, the hallway before her seemed to stretch impossibly long, the end disappearing into blackness. She stopped, eyes darting around, but there was no exit in sight. The air was thick, heavy, and the strange humming from the elevator grew louder. Sarah's pulse quickened as she realized she had reached the source of the chaos. The elevator doors were wide open, the dim light inside beckoning her. She could feel it. Something was waiting for her, something dark. She had no choice now. She stepped toward it, steeling herself for whatever she might face. As Sarah stepped into the elevator, the doors slammed shut behind her with an almost deafening sound. She glanced around. The elevator wasn't moving, but the feeling of something watching her was overwhelming. The walls seemed to pulse, the air becoming thick with an oppressive weight. The lights flickered, casting strange shifting shadows around her. She reached for the control panel, her fingers trembling, but before she could press any buttons, the elevator jolted downward. The familiar hum of the building was replaced by something more sinister, an unnatural, distorted sound that made her skin crawl. The elevator continued to descend at an alarming rate. Sarah's stomach churned with the sudden speed, her legs feeling weak beneath her. She gripped the railing, trying to steady herself. The strange hum grew louder, more intense, filling her ears. She closed her eyes for a moment, wishing it would stop, wishing she could escape. But when she opened them again, everything had changed. The walls of the elevator had disappeared, replaced by an endless abyss of darkness. The floor beneath her seemed to ripple, like the surface of water disturbed by an unseen force. Wah! In the distance a figure appeared, tall, cloaked in shadow. It moved closer, its presence overwhelming. Sarah could barely make out its features, but she could feel its eyes on her. The air seemed to grow colder with every step it took toward her. Panic surged within her, but she refused to give in. "What are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stopped, and for a moment everything fell silent. Then, in a voice that seemed to echo from everywhere, it spoke. "I am what lies beyond, the door you opened." The figure raised its hand, and the elevator jolted once again, sending Sarah to her knees. She fought to stay upright, her hands trembling as she tried to push herself to her feet. The entity seemed to tower over her, its voice reverberating through her mind. "You cannot stop what has begun," it said, its words sending a cold shiver down her spine. "But you can join us." Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment. The end. But then, something inside her clicked. She refused to be part of this. With every ounce of strength she had left, Sarah reached for the control panel. She slammed her hand down on the emergency stop button. The moment Sarah's hand hit the emergency stop button, the elevator's descent halted with a violent jolt. The world around her flickered, the darkness wavering like smoke. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. The figure in front of her let out an eerie laugh, its form shifting like shadows in the dark. "You think this will stop it?" it sneered. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, but her mind was clear. She couldn't let it end like this. Not here, not now. "I don't need to stop it," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I just need to make sure it never happens again." The figure's laugh died down, replaced by an unnatural stillness. The elevator's interior was still shrouded in darkness, but Sarah could feel the entity's presence pressing against her, suffocating her. The walls of the elevator seemed to close in, as if trying to trap her in this nightmare. But she didn't move. She stood her ground, her gaze unwavering. "You don't understand," it said in a voice that reverberated through her mind. "Once the door is opened, it cannot be closed." But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. She had a plan, and she wasn't going to let this thing control her. As the entity's words filled her mind, Sarah remembered something. Time's words. He had said that the elevator was a doorway. What if it was more than just a physical door? What if it was tied to the very building, to the essence of what had been happening here all along? Her heart pounded as the idea began to form. If the elevator was the source, maybe she could sever its connection to the other world. Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed the keychain, the symbol of the doorway, and pressed it into the control panel. She knew what she had to do. The moment the keychain made contact with the panel, the elevator lurched violently. A deafening sound, like metal grinding against metal, filled the air. Sarah's vision blurred as the building seemed to shake beneath her. The lights flickered again, faster this time, as though the entire structure was struggling against an unseen force. The figure roared in fury, but Sarah could hear nothing over the thunderous noise that surrounded her. She had done it. She had severed the connection. But she couldn't stop now. She had to escape before the building fell apart around her. With every ounce of strength left in her, Sarah ran toward the elevator doors, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the building starting to collapse around her, the walls trembling as if they too were alive. The doors opened, but instead of the familiar hallway, all she could see was an abyss, an endless, swirling blackness. The figure's voice echoed in her mind, telling her it was too late, that the door would never truly close. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. With a final breath, she stepped into the abyss, determined to leave it all behind. As Sarah stepped into the abyss, the building around her crumbled into nothingness. The last remnants of the elevator's grip on reality faded away. There was no turning back now. Her body trembled, but a sense of peace washed over her as the darkness consumed her. She had done what needed to be done. The truth had been revealed, the door had been closed. And now, there was only silence. The kind of silence that comes after the storm, when everything finally settles. Sarah had survived, and that was all that mattered.